Hi guys, it's Erin from Ginger's Florals. Today we're starting Snapdragons, Foxglove, and Sweet Peas from seeds. And I'm going to share with you my foolproof tips on getting the best germination and strongest plants that go out into the garden. So let's start with sweet peas. Yes, those are little sweet peas in the bottom of this jar. So one of the things that you can do to ensure good germination is to actually soak your seeds. Sweet pea seeds have a really hard outer shell, and sometimes when you seed them just in your seed trays the way you normally do, there's not enough moisture to soften that outer shell and actually get good germination. So I take all of my sweet peas and I will put them in jars just like this. It's separated by variety, obviously. And I will soak them for 24 hours. These, I have a couple more jars over there that have all been soaked for the last 24 hours, so they're perfect and ready to be planted. The three varieties that I'm growing, I've talked about them before, but I just want to show you some pictures of what they look like, is this one here is Oban Bay. It's one of my absolute favorites because it has these great big huge flowers. It'll have 6 or 7 flowers on each stem. The stems will be up to a foot long. I'm not even exaggerating. And they're the softest light blue and white combination. I just love them. They really are one of the best. And they are very strongly scented. Some sweet peas, I mean, you grow sweet peas for the scent, right? They're a very nostalgic flower. And some just don't have as much scent. The wild ones that we have growing around here don't have any scent at all. These ones definitely do. Another one of the varieties that I'm growing is the Blue Shift, and it's not quite as strongly scented and the stems aren't quite as long as Oban Bay, but it's definitely striking with its color. It blooms this deep, almost grapey purple color, and then it turns blue as it ages. It actually changes color, fades to blue, and it's so beautiful. And then the last one is Molly Railstone. This one is a lot like the Oban Bay, only it's not, I mean, this one's definitely, Oban Bay is definitely the biggest of all of them flower-wise. But it has good long stems and pretty decent sized flowers, but it's a soft sort of peachy pink color. And it has a really beautiful scent, very sugary. I love it. And it's definitely a big hit with my customers at the markets. We'll see how it does when I sell them wholesale this year. Okay, so the next seeds we're going to start are Foxglove. Now, most Foxglove are biennial. They will, biennial just means that you start the seed with nature. So biennials bloom in May usually, and then they'll drop their seeds, and then they will sprout that same year, but they'll spend the whole rest of that season just building a good root system and just a little tuft of green, and then it's the following spring that they'll bloom. Now, like I said, most Foxglove are biennial and they grow just like that. And they do wonderfully. I have a bunch of it out there in the field already. But this variety is called Pink Gin. And it's actually a single season, same season bloomer, which which is completely different than all the others, and it's great. I'm really excited to grow these. I tried to grow some last year, but my timing was way off, so it didn't really work out. But these ones I'm really stoked for. I don't grow a lot of Foxglove just simply because it grows wild here. But the wild varieties, as beautiful as they are, they're only a few colors. There's like a lavendery color, a raspberry, and a white, and they just stay in that color palette basically. And this one with the pinky peach color of it, I'm really excited to try. All right, and then the last type of flower we're going to grow today are Snapdragons. I adore Snapdragons. Starting these are some of my favorite flowers to start. They sprout really easily. They grow really well in our climates. Zone 8B, Pacific Northwest Zone 8B. It's not the same as an 8B in, say, North Carolina. It's definitely cooler and it's wet, but not humid. And the Snapdragons love it here. I have some right here already that I'll talk to you a little bit later about with tips for growing them well and getting the most out of them. But these 4 or 5 varieties that I'm going to start today, all of these are in the groups 1 and 2. So there's 4 groups of Snapdragons. 1, 2, 3, 4. The 1 and 2 are your early season Snapdragons. A lot like the Lysianthus, they want to grow early. They like the cool soil. They want shorter day length time to bloom beautifully. The groups 3 and 4, they'll do a lot better in the later part of the season. Snapdragons are still a relatively cool flower, and they don't prefer to be super hot in the summertime. But the other varieties tolerate it a lot better. And I will start another round of these in about a month, and that will definitely be the warmer season varieties. For this round, we're growing the Chantilly. This one is Chantilly Cream Yellow. Oh, I grew this one last year, and it's really, really beautiful. It's almost a lemony yellow. I just love it, and customers loved it. And it stands out, but it's not like a jarring school bus yellow type color. This next one is called Chantilly Light Pink. As the name suggests, it's a really soft pink color. And these are, when you think of Snapdragons in your garden, and the type where you could squeeze the side of the flower and it would open and look like a dragon talking. I know, it's funny. I'll show you. I know, it is what it is. That's my memory of it. These are not the same flower shape. You could still do that, but it won't have the same effect. These are they call it an azalea type flower. They're much more frilly and open and just lovely, romantic, I would say. So Chantilly Light Pink. This one is new to me. I talked about it before, but it's a double frap light pink. And this one is a very light color. It's whitish. It's almost white and soft pink. Like I said, I'll put pictures up for all of these so that you can see exactly what they look like. This one I'm really excited about. It's new to me. It's new to Johnny's, which is where I get most of my seeds. I've had that question asked a few times. So we're going to grow a half a tray of these. And then I have 2 more that I'm kind of back and forth on. There's a Chantilly Light Salmon, which is such a soft, beautiful, peachy sort of color. And then there's a Costa Apricot. So these are both that same salmony peachy color, but they're different from each other. And they have slightly different flower shapes. So I think I'm just going to start both, and then we'll see which one I like best for future years. Okay, now I'm going to go get all of my seed trays ready for all of these. I want to show you what I'm going to use, and then I'll just get them all ready, and then we'll talk through how to actually sow the seeds and what all of these like the most. So first off, for the sweet peas, we're going to use this great big seed tray. This is a 50 count. And it's literally 50 cells in the same 10 by 20, but it's got these really deep cells with lots of room for root growth. So sweet peas, they're kind of a little bit fussy, but they don't like their roots to be disturbed. So this big cell will give it lots of time to grow. They put out a really long taproot, and then it grows from there. So these seed trays give me a lot more time. If I tried to grow them in just the regular 72 cells, they wouldn't be happy for very long. I'd have to be potting them up or trying to plant them out when it's still too cold to want to do that. So these guys, the big 50 count trays is what I'm going to use. I use these also for cuttings. When we take our dahlia cuttings and our centenarian cuttings, I'll also use these. And sometimes I'll use them for sunflowers, especially the ones that I start earliest in the season, because they also want to grow fast, and they will fill up a regular seed tray. And if you don't get them out into the garden fast enough, they'll suffer, and then they won't bloom as nicely as you want them to. And then everything else, the Snapdragons and the Foxglove, I'm gonna sow in these 72 count trays. Most of my seed starting, I use these 72 count trays. For ease of calculating how many I need to fill my beds, and to give myself a little bit of fudge room on how fast I get them out into the ground. Some plants you can grow, like I did with my Lisianthus, in these tiny little 128 cell trays, which you can fit 128 flowers by 72, which is great if you're really short on space, but I'm gonna end up having to pot those up no matter what. See, Lisianthus thankfully grow super slow, so they can stay in there for a while, but Snapdragons or any of the rest of these, they wouldn't be happy in there for more than a couple weeks, and that's just, it's a waste of time for me. Okay, so I'm just gonna get these all filled. Same as normal, I'm using seed starting mix. I've got some Pro Mix, and then just dampen it so that it holds its shape when you squeeze it, but it's not dripping water, and then fill up all the trays. It's really all there is to it, and I have a few other videos if you want the detailed, like step-by-step watch of that. All right, so all of the seed trays are ready. They're all filled, they're all damp. I'm gonna start with the sweet peas. This one is my Obon Bay. I have the least of these, so I'm gonna start with these ones. And I'm just gonna, so what I like to do, here, let me show you what the seeds look like. So you can see sort of the size of them. They're not very big, but general rule of thumb for any seed starting is, if you don't know, unless it tells you to surface sow or what have you, if it just tells you to cover up the seed, is to go 2 times the depth of the seed itself. So I'm gonna just take my pen and make a little tiny spot for each one of these to go into. And I'm not gonna do more than half of this tray. Most of what I want to grow is the Molly Rillstone. So I'll have about 25 of these, 25 of the Blue Shift, and then 50 of the Molly Rillstones. Now I saved all of these seeds last season. I have a video, I made a video at the time when I saved them. So if you're curious and want to save your own, go check that out. And then put all these in here. Really, it's very simple. These should do just fine because they were soaked. You can see neither of these. Some of these you'll see where it actually started to sort of split open. That's what you want to see. Most all of these I'm going to end up putting 2 seeds per cell because I have more than I need, and because I want to make sure that these are all viable and I have good seedlings. So they just go in the little wells that you made, and then cover them up and water them in. It's pretty simple. But it's really important to give these guys enough room. So the other thing about sweet peas is when you're gonna go plant them out, they need to be still in the cool season. So I'm gonna end up putting these out. You'll read some places that you still wanna wait till your last frost, but my goal for these is to plant them out in spring before our last frost. So sometime in late March is my goal to get these out into the garden so that they can establish good roots and grow really well. So sweet peas have sort of they like to be in the sunshine. What is it called? It's something like they like their feet in the shade, but their hair in the sun or something like that. Their face in the sun and their feet in the shade. So getting them into the ground early enough in the season so that they can get good deep roots that'll keep them cool, but they still get all the sunshine that they need. And I will show you when I go plant these out what that looks like. The sweet peas will bloom for me in usually late April through early June, but then it starts to get too warm and they don't like it and they'll peter out. Though this last year, amazingly, they actually, a couple of the seedlings I planted out late, very late, and they kept on growing and kept on blooming all the way up until just recently because we never had a frost. Today we had a good hard frost. Okay, so I'm just gonna do the same thing with all the rest of these and then we'll get on to the Snapdragons and Foxglove. I am also picking the biggest, fattest ones that I can to plant. You see that one split open like a corn kernel. This step isn't entirely necessary, but I like to put the vermiculite on just to help with moisture control. Sweet peas don't really want to dry out. They do need to stay evenly moist. So these trays are ready. I'm gonna put them in under the lights, but not on a heat mat. These are cool flowers, so I don't want them to get too hot, but I still expect to see germination within a week-ish. These guys, the greenhouse in here, although it gets fairly cool at night because it's down into the 20s now finally, it stays. My lights are right next to the heater, which keeps it around 60, which is just fine for these guys. They don't want to be too hot. They just don't want to get really, really cold. So these will go under the lights. Like I said, I expect to see germination within about a week. I'll come in here every day and check moisture levels on all of my seedlings. Sweet peas, you really don't want to let them fully dry out. They don't want to be soggy, but they want to stay damp. So just keep that in mind. Okay, the next thing we're going to try is the foxglove. So let me just read to you. So 10 to 12 weeks before last frost, which is right where we're at. Don't cover the seeds. So when I pull these out, I'll try to show you, but the seeds are super tiny. They're a lot like the ice and poppies, though maybe even smaller. They look like little specks of dust. So yeah, don't bury them. I'm not even going to use vermiculite on this one until I see some growth. Yeah, it's super tiny. So I will mist them in once I get them sown. So these guys, like I said, they're a first year bloomer, but they're also a cool flower. They don't want to be blooming in the middle of the summer. My native ones, the flowers you'll see this coming season that grow wild along the north end of my flower fields, they bloom usually late May, early June. So I expect these to bloom right around the same time. These guys, I will wait until the last frost to harden off and plant out, but there's probably 100 little seeds, but you can't barely see any of them. So I'm gonna do just like I did the other day with my Iceland poppies, and I will just tap them out of this bag one at a time, hopefully, into each of these into each of these cells. That way I can try not to lose them all. If you go too fast, they can all come out at once, and they're way too tiny to try and fish out and move. Can you see? See those tiny little things. So I know this looks tedious, and it is, but it ultimately saves me time in the end. There's another method that a lot of people use, and if you don't have the patience for the one tiny seed at a time, this is a good one, is to get just a flat tray and put some soil in it, just like we did for filling up the seed packs, and just sprinkle your seeds over top. And then once they all bloom, or not bloom, once they all sprout, you could prick out each one of those little seedlings and place them inside of a seed or a tray later on, which is a fantastic way to do it. But it's just another extra set of steps that I don't have the time to take. So it just takes me an extra couple minutes to do the slow process the way I'm doing it, and then it's just fine. So now I'm just going to mist it in, put a dome over it, and put it under the lights. Okay, now we're gonna do our Snapdragons. It's very similar process to the Foxglove. I'm gonna surface sow them just like I did the others, so I'm not gonna make you sit through all that again. I'm gonna get these sown, put domes on them, put them up on the heat mats. These ones do want to be kept warm. And then I'll show you one other trick or one other tip for how to care for them while they're still in the greenhouse that will give you even more blooms. So stay tuned for that. Super tiny seeds again. Can you see those? Okay, now all of those seeds are sown. They're up under lights, under domes. I misted them down only to settle the seeds in, not to really water them. Now, there's one thing that I normally do when I'm sowing seeds that I didn't do here. I normally will take the entire tray of seedlings once they're all sown, and I will set it into a flat tray that has a couple inches of water in it, and I will let them just sit and soak up the water from the flat tray. I didn't do that this time because I got a real good amount of moisture into the soil, so it didn't really need it. It was good and wet, but it wasn't dripping, so I didn't really need to do that step. The biggest reason for that is if you don't get your soil damp enough and then you try to water from above, a lot of the soil that's in bales like that, it's so dry, it's like kiln dried and it's hydrophobic. And when you're trying to water it in from up above, it can tend to wash away your seeds. So if your soil is still pretty dry after you've sown it, I definitely recommend doing the bottom watering soaking method as opposed to spraying over top or using a watering can to try and water. That can just lead to a mess. Okay, so like I said, I'll come in and I'll check all of these every day and make sure everything has the proper amount of moisture. Snapdragons, they don't need to be super super wet all the time, but they need to maintain a consistent moisture level. Now for that last tip that I wanted to share with you on growing snapdragons from seed and how to get the most blooms that you possibly can. So this batch of seedlings, all of these, I actually sowed them last fall. I had every intention of getting them out into the garden, but it just never happened. So I've potted them up. I'm keeping them in the greenhouse until probably mid-February, and then I will harden them off and get them out into the garden. But what I want to show you is that every single one of these, you see how well they grew, how tall they got, and I have come in and pinched them. Pinching basically means that you find 2 or 3 sets of leaves and then you cut off everything that's growing above that. And you can see on this one, these tiny little shoots that are coming up. That's because I pinched it here. You can see on this one, because those little shoots are there, because I topped it, they're going to branch off and I'll get more blooms. Each one of those little branches will become a full, big, healthy stem, and I will get blooms off of every single one of those. So I highly recommend, if you're going for volume, to pinch your snapdragons. Some flowers, like single stem sunflowers or stalk, you absolutely don't want to do this. But because these are sort of medium producer type plants, pinching them actually absolutely adds to the number of stems that you'll get off of each plant. So I have 50 or so plants right here, but each one of them, instead of just getting 1 stem of snapdragon, I will get 2 or 3 depending on which ones they are, and that's quite a jump. If I'm only planting 10 feet of one variety, which means I only have 65 plants, but if I can get 130 stems out of it, we're doing pretty good. And you can do that step when they're much younger, and I'll show you that later on when this round of snapdragons gets up and going. And then, like I said earlier, I will do 1 more round of seed sowing of snapdragons, and those will be the warmer season varieties. All right, guys, that's going to do it for this video. I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope that the tips are helpful for growing your snapdragons and foxglove and sweet peas especially. They're some of my absolute favorites. If you like this, hit the thumbs up. If you haven't already, consider subscribing, and then I'll see you in the next video. Bye, guys.